is a short walk around of my Chinese clone of a Honda Super Cub. This is actually a UK imported version by a company called Riders of Yeovil, which is in the southwest of England. I bought it a year ago. It actually come in a crate all the way from China and then was sold to somebody local, well, about 40 miles from here. He actually assembled it, and it was for his son, but his son decided he didn't want it. So that's where I came into the scene. So I bought the bike brand new, unregistered. It's a 110cc capacity version of probably like a Honda C90 or a Honda Passport. It's not the most high-powered machine you'd ever ride, but it's adequate for tootling about. A lot of the details are very similar to the original Honda Cub. There are some differences here with the indicators, not quite the same. This nice chrome trim for the headlight looks good, but it's actually nothing but plastic. In fact, the whole thing is plastic. It looks a lot better than it feels. So this is the brand, Super, and there you go, there's the thing, Super Cub. I think it's actually known as a Super Cub KN107. I think that's the actual model. What can I say about it? Well, I've had it for a year. I haven't done a great deal of miles, that's kilometers, so we're somewhere, maybe 460 miles or so, 713 kilometers. This is the actual manufacturer, if you can see that there, which is Chongqing Guanyu Motorcycle Manufacture Company Limited. The bike hasn't been kept outdoors, it's been kept locked up in a shed under cover. I haven't generally used it in the rain, but most of it is plastic, so there's not really that much of it to rust. I'm sure things like this spine carrier could start to rust. There's a tiny little bit of rust that's there on the gear lever. It's on this particular version, it's 3-speed semi-automatic. You've got 3 gears down, and then you knock it back up 3 to get to neutral. There is an American, but there's two versions they sell in America that I'm aware of. There was the original one, which was the Fly Scout, which I believe had a 4-speed semi-automatic. And then there's also another one, I think it's called a BMS XL 110 Bi-Metro, some ridiculously named machine. I don't think it's probably as good build quality as the original Honda. Some of the details are a little bit sort of cheesy, you know, like this all looks a bit flimsy to me, but you can see there's a tiny bit of surface rust, but that'll probably just come off rubbing it. Overall, for what I paid for it, I can't really complain. In the UK they go for about $1,600 roughly, or just over £1,000. You could actually buy them in the crate for about $1,000 or 600 and something pounds. I bought this machine because I was looking to get an original Honda Cub, but the prices just went ridiculous for old rusty Cubs. You know, the Cubs obviously they tend to rust round here, whereas in this case it's never going to rust because it's actually plastic. And then in the UK we have annual inspections called an MOT. So each MOT costs you £30 or $50. So I've got 3 years without an MOT, so that saves me $150. Obviously it comes with brand new tyres, brand new brakes, brand new exhaust. Because it was built in the crate, there wasn't a warranty as such, but if you buy it ready made, I think it's a 12-month warranty. I've not had any issues of major concern. I've had a couple of little niggles. The first one was the, you'll see here, the LED fuel meter. You see it goes, you turn it on, goes all the way up. So at the moment it's showing this basically 4 bars, 2 bars in the green. I had a problem with the sensor under here. This is another minor niggle. Anyway, the sensor wasn't obviously going up the float. It wasn't going up and down, so I removed it from underneath the seat, and then now it works again. But basically, whenever I turned it on, it was only showing halfway, even though the tank was full. But it would actually show when it was becoming empty, so that wasn't such a big deal. Some of these bits are a bit kind of cheap, cheesy kind of looking. You know, the quality of this particular bracket is not wonderful. This is a bit of a crappy quality bracket for the saddle, but in all honesty, the seat's usually down and it's not an issue. It's kind of secured in place by these 2 suckers which go at the back of the seat here. This is the sender unit underneath here that I was having a problem with. I just undid it and moved it up and down the full range of motion, and the empty to full fuel gauge went up and down correspondingly, so it seems to be okay. This is a pain in the arse actually, having a locking cap underneath, because I tend to unlock the seat with the key and leave it there. Then when you go to fill up, you've then got to take this out, you've got to turn the key and then turn this. I think it's overkill. It's actually quite nicely made, this fuel cap, but I think it's overkill for something that's out of sight. Just the plain old simple petrol cap or gas cap if you want to call it, would suit me fine. Then you've got a helmet lock here. I suppose you can probably put a helmet in there as well, but yeah, this is just a bit rickety, but again, it's a detail, and compared to what you would pay for an original one, I'm not entirely sure how good the original is really. So you just put that back in, then you push the pin in to relocate it. It actually has quite fancy shocks. It's got air adjustable shocks, it appears. I've never done anything to try and adjust that. They're in racing red as well, which might suggest there's some sort of speed to be getting out of this machine, but it's certainly not a race bike. I get, well, on the flat, it's comfortable at say up to 50 miles an hour, 45 to 50 miles per hour. The miles per hour is the lower part. The reading here is in kilometers. I have actually had it right off the edge down a hill with my head down. Whether that's accurate as being 60 plus miles an hour, I'm not sure. But the leading link front suspension, it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence if you're on a rougher surface. Once you go over 50, it just feels a bit woolly. So I don't recommend taking it really much over 55. It just starts to feel a bit unstable. But again, it's not a machine built for speed. The tyres are actually okay for what they are. I mean, I'm sure if you're used to higher performance machines, and I mean, I've got bikes that are much more powerful than this, including an older GSXR. I wouldn't recommend perhaps tyres like this for GSXR, but for a Cub clone, it's perfectly up to the job. They're nylon, so they're probably not wonderful in the wet, but I don't use this in the wet, so it's not really an issue. One of the other things I would say is that the front brake, it's not wonderful, especially if you're used to higher performance bikes or bikes with disc brakes. It's adequate, I think, is the best way to put it. I actually just noticed that might actually be slightly bent. Maybe actually straighten that out. Oh no, it's not. It's not bent. It just looks like it. But yeah, there's not a great deal of feel in this. I mean, it's, you know, it pulls the lever and it moves as it should, but there's not a lot of resistance. You really have to use a combination of the back and the front brake, and certainly you have to use the back brake a lot more than I'm used to. I pretty much almost exclusively use the front brake on any other bike I ride, but when you're just bimbling around at 45 miles an hour, it's okay. And the reason I bought this bike is basically it's quite hilly around here in Scotland. Up here there's like a back road along by that dike, the Drystone dike that you can see there. That's what I bought this for. It's just for a sunny day when I want to go out and just bimble around on the back roads, just for a bit of fun. And part of the motivation to get this was, I suppose it's maybe a midlife crisis. You know, when I was a young lad, I had a couple of small capacity bikes. Started off with a Yamaha FS1E50 that would do 45 on the flat out and 56 miles an hour down a hill. And then I moved on to a Suzuki GP100, which would do 70 easy enough on the flat and 80 something down a big hill. But I quite fancied a Honda Cub, and I thought, well, this is a bit of a compromise. It's like late 70s technology in a new package. There's no pretension that there's any performance in it, so it kind of gives a similar performance to perhaps a low capacity bike of 50 to 100 cc from my youth, like of the sort of early 80s. Apart from those details, there's not really much about it that I would say that puts me off the bike. I'm 6 feet tall, so I tend to have to kind of sit about here when I'm on the bike. You could obviously take passengers on it. It has the foot pegs for a pillion, but I mean the power delivery of it around here with the hills, it's not wonderful for going up hills. You pretty much have to get down to second gear, whereas if I'm just on the bike on my own, it can pretty much cope with it. It'll lug a bit, but it will get up the hill normally in third gear. Although it's 110cc, I would say it probably feels more like a two-stroke that's probably about 70cc. But then again, that might just be because I'm used to bigger machines and I forget how slow small capacity bikes are. But it's not of the performance level of, say, the GP100, which was a 98cc two-stroke. It's nowhere near that level of performance, even though it's got an extra 12 cubic centimeters. One of the things that tends to catch me out with this bike very regularly is the kill switch, which is built into the kickstand. The number of times I've not noticed that this has somehow been put down, because I tend to put it on the centre stand for that reason. And you fire the bloody thing over and over and over, and it just doesn't take off. But starting it is usually pretty good, especially if you remember to put the kickstand up. But it is a little bit temperamental. You pretty much always have to use the choke. Now I've not actually started this bike since yesterday, so I'll give you a demonstration of what it's like. So ignition on, it's in neutral as you can see, choke levers here, move it across. So anyway, well, that's started. It sounds like it's going to cut out, and it did. So that's it on the choke. I mean, it ticks over very nicely. It sounds as I remember a Honda Cub sounding. There's the brand name of the importer, Riders. It only takes a few minutes to warm up, and then you're off. But overall, if you're looking for cheap transportation with a bit of retro style, I certainly think the Super Cub's got what it takes. The only thing is, if you can get a container load from China, they are very, very cheap. I think they're about $300 each. If you buy like a container load, which is very cheap for two wheels that are of reasonable quality, or acceptable quality. But one of the other things I will say that's very good with this, although it's pretty cheap crap, the headlight because it's a 12 volt system, the headlight is absolutely brilliant for a small capacity bike, because I remember small capacity bikes in the past, you might as well have had a candle, but then again they were 6 volt. The thing I noticed with this when it came from the factory, it was like a searchlight. The high beam was just like up in the sky, and the way you adjust that is you have to adjust this bolt. Now it looks pretty straightforward. You'd adjust that and then you turn it or angle it how you want, but I found that was you couldn't get it at the position that you needed it, so I had to take out the two screws, one here, one on the other side, remove the headlamp unit, and then just manually adjust it, tighten it up, and then put the whole thing back together. But yeah, overall I'm very pleased with it. It gets a lot of comments when I take it out, mostly from guys asking where they can get one. So far it's been very reliable. I know a lot of people are very, very negative about Chinese motorcycles in general. I have to admit, I was one of them. I just thought they're just cheap shit. Don't last 5 minutes. But in all honesty, when I think back to my youth and the Japanese motorcycles that everybody pays thousands and thousands of pounds for in restored condition, they were pretty shit as well, actually. They rusted like hell. They broke down, they blew up, and they were supposedly reliable compared to the British or European equipment at the time. So, as I say, my outlook with this machine is it's a new version of 1970s technology, and for that particular purpose, it certainly suits the purpose. I'm not disappointed with it. Would I say that I would want to ride this day in, day out as my primary transport? I'm not sure I would, but for a bit of retro fun, with presumably, hopefully, decent reliability, I'm not going to complain about it at all. The other thing is it's pretty good on fuel. It's obviously not fully broken in yet, but I'm getting at least 120 imperial miles to the gallon, so that's 4.546 litres, I think. The tank holds about 4 litres or 3.8, maybe like a US gallon, and most of the time I fill it up, I'll put 2 litres in, and I've travelled somewhere about 100 kilometres. So 2 litres is, I mean, again, that's a rough estimate, because it does not have a trip meter, but usually I've put in 2 litres every 100 kilometres. So every 100 kilometres, that's just over 60 miles, and I'm putting in 2 litres. So anyway, that's less than half of a UK or imperial gallon, but you'll be getting, as I say, at least 120 US miles per gallon out of it, based on my experience. And as I say, round about here we have an awful lot of hills, so if you live in a part of the world where it's very flat and you just bimble along at 45 or whatever, I think I've read of people getting 200 miles per gallon, but obviously I'm not getting anything like that. And 120 US miles per gallon, or UK, is very acceptable. So, or for our European friends, 50 kilometers per litre. That's pretty good. So I'm not sure if there's anything about it that I can say otherwise. I say in a year it's in pretty decent shape, but it's not been left out to the elements. These screws look like they're maybe getting a little bit discoloured, but that will be because of the heat of the exhaust. Obviously it's got the fully enclosed chain. I'm not expecting much of an issue with adjustment or wearing out chains. I've just noticed a detail there. I think perhaps the suspension is not equally adjusted, although I haven't noticed any problems. It's about a centimetre there. No, maybe it is very close. But yeah, yep, quite happy with it. If you've got any questions, just ask. And there's also a thread regarding this bike on the C90club.co.uk website under the other marks or other models section of the forum. There's a lot of information there about the bikes. But that's it. So I shall close now.